Welcome to this short video lesson on personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment is all equipment, devices, appliances and associated accessories, all equipment that is worn by an individual in order to provide protection against one or more health or safety risks while at work. Why do we need PPE? Protect employees from health and safety risks encountered at work, safeguard them from bodily injuries. Let's look at the ILO Code of Practice and what it says about PPEs. The use of personal protective equipment should not be regarded as an alternative to engineering or other suitable control measures, but should be provided and maintained where such control measures cannot ensure protection. Effective action should continue to be taken by the employer to ensure that control measures are developed and applied in order to eliminate or minimize the risk to a level at which personal protection may not be required. So this simply says that PPEs are the last level in the hierarchy of control measures. There must be focus on the upper four levels of the hierarchy, which is elimination, substitution, engineering controls and administrative controls. So PPEs must only be seen as an option of last resort. Personal protective equipment includes respiratory protective equipment, protective clothing and footwear, equipment to protect the face, eyes and hands, and equipment to prevent an accumulation of static electricity, for example, anti-static footwear. Personal protective equipment should afford adequate protection against the risk from those hazardous chemicals to which the wearer is exposed throughout the period during which such equipment is necessary, having regard to the type of work. So the PPE must be designed and chosen appropriately for the kind of hazard and for the kind of work being carried out. Items of personal protective equipment provided should comply with national law or be in accordance with criteria approved or recognized by the competent authority and based on national or international standards. The equipment provided should be suitable for its purpose, and there should be a sufficient supply readily available in the workplace for workers who require it. Workers required to wear protective equipment should be fully instructed in its use. This is an important part of the use of personal protective equipment. The workers who are using it must be fully trained because incorrect usage can lead to other issues and hazards. When workers have been informed accordingly, they should use the equipment provided throughout the time they are exposed to the risk that requires its use for protection. This puts the onus or the burden on the workers that they should not defeat the purpose of the personal protective equipment. Employers should provide supervision to ensure that the equipment is properly used. In addition, the employer must make sure that there are supervisory staff who are looking at the proper use of PPEs. Then there is a very important fact, all personal protective equipment that is necessary for safety in the use of chemicals should be provided and maintained by the employer without cost to the worker. This is an important facet of the use of PPEs. The worker should not be charged for the PPEs. They are a part of the work equipment, and therefore the cost of supply and maintenance must be borne by the employer at all times. Training in PPE usage. Workers should be instructed in the use of PPE and protective clothing. Training is essential because an incorrectly used PPE may itself cause health and safety hazards. Employers must provide employees with information, instruction and training that is adequate, appropriate and that they understand. The last part is important. If required, the training may be delivered in the native language of the worker to make sure that the worker understands the training. Employees should know the risk which the PPE will avoid or limit, what the PPE is for, how to use the PPE provided, any action needed by the wearer to ensure the PPE remains in an efficient state, efficient working order and in good repair. A competent person having a full understanding of the nature of the hazard and the type, range and performance of the protection required should select suitable items of personal protective equipment and protective clothing, and B, arrange that they are properly stored, maintained, cleaned, and if necessary for health reasons, disinfected or sterilized at suitable intervals. So there must be a competent person who is supervising the use and maintenance of the PPEs. Let's look at head protection. Safety helmets or hard hats. These are meant to protect the head from injury due to falling or flying objects or due to striking against objects or structures. Crash helmet or a full face helmet. Helmets are useful as safety gear to prevent injuries in an uncontrolled environment, especially used for two-wheeler riding. A hard hat is not a crash helmet. Hard hats have got a different purpose and crash helmets have a different design and a different work purpose. Eye and face protection. Welding face shield is used when performing certain types of welding to protect the eyes, face and neck from flash burn, ultraviolet light, sparks, infrared light and heat. Sandblasting hood. It assures continuous airflow to the visor in order to prevent fogging and dampens noise. So this provides a complete protection to the head and neck and the entire body from dust. Safety glasses and safety goggles. Eye protection can be extremely important in the workplace when performing jobs like welding and handling any harmful, corrosive, acidic materials. It can protect eyes and face against impacts, liquid splash and hazards like molten metal splash or electric arcs. Ear protection. Ear muffs and earplugs. Hearing protection devices or HPDs are your best defense when you are unable to reduce your exposure to loud noise levels. Earplugs can be used from 8 to 140 dBA. Ear muffs must be used when the sound levels cross 140 dBA. Hand protection. Gloves provide hand protection. Hand protection gloves are your best defense when you are unable to reduce your exposure to cuts, lacerations, burns, irritations, crushes and fractures and musculoskeletal disorders. Body protection. The protective clothing as per ILO code. The selection of protective clothing should take into account A. The ability of the material from which it is made to resist penetration by the hazardous chemicals concerned. B. The adequacy of the design and the fit of the clothing and whether it's suitable for the intended use. C. The environment in which it will be worn. D. In the case of dust, the dust release characteristics of the clothing material. E. In the case of flammable substances, its characteristics in the event of a fire. F. The need to prevent fire or explosions due to static electricity. Waterproof clothing and head coverings when working in adverse weather conditions is required. Distinguishing clothing or reflective devices or other conspicuously visible material when there is regular exposure to danger from moving vehicles. On the right, you see a coverall with reflective tapes on it. Body coverall. Body coverall protects the personnel from wide range of hazards like chemical spills, fires, naked flames, radiant heat. There are different kinds of body coveralls: arc resistant coveralls, high visibility coveralls, fire retardant coveralls, and the coverall must be of the right size. On the right side, you are seeing a worker who is using an oversized coverall which can hamper the worker's movements and create other kinds of hazards. Foot protection. Safety footwear act as a barrier of protection and take care of the feet. Prevents injuries involving sharp objects, objects littered on site and falling material. Most of them have a metal toe. Some of them have a fiber toe when you cannot use metal. Types of shoes. There are different kinds of safety shoes available. Light low-cut leather safety shoes for climbing jobs. Normal safety shoes or boots for heavy-duty work. Rubber or gum boots provide protection against corrosive substances, chemicals, and water. Full body harness. A full body harness having a double lanyard. It's designed to hold the wearer upright in the event of a fall from height. If worn correctly, it distributes the energy generated during free fall across the wearer's body evenly. Respiratory equipment and breathing apparatus. Respiratory protective equipment RPE are used to protect the individual against the inhalation of hazardous substances in the workplace air. RPE ILO Code of Practice. Respiratory protective equipment should be selected in compliance with national laws or national or international standards, approved or recognized by the competent authority concerning the suitability of the design of such equipment for the type of hazardous chemical and the degree of exposure involved. So the RPE must be selected based on the kind of hazardous chemical and how much exposure will be involved. Respiratory protective equipment should also be selected taking into account the work involved and should be matched to the wearer. Again, there has to be a proper fit between the equipment and the person. For example, a face mask must be designed to suit the facial contours of the user. Respiratory protective equipment should be used only as a supplementary, temporary, emergency or exceptional measure and not as an alternative to technical control. Once again, RPE should be used only as a last resort control measure. Before that, we should look at all the other possibilities of substitution, elimination, engineering controls, and administrative controls. Filter masks, respiratory protective equipment mask with coarse filter fitted in the cartridge. It is used to filter stone dust and any substance producing asbestos. These filters have a specific lifetime. It should be changed as necessary, preferably within 6 months. Then there are masks with activated carbon fitted in the cartridge. It is used to prevent the user from paint solvent gases and welding fumes. This cartridge should be changed in every 6 months to 1 year. Then there are masks with gas and dust filters. It is used to prevent the user from particulate and gaseous contaminants. It should be changed in every 6 months or when you detect a taste or smell coming from the mask. Breathing apparatus, self-contained breathing apparatus, provides breathable air in an atmosphere that is immediately dangerous to life or health. Cylinder should be recharged when the pressure falls below 90%. Only air must be filled. Never fill oxygen in a SCBA equipment because it can create serious fire hazards. Breathing apparatus, another type is compressed airline. Air supplying types of respirator provide a respirable atmosphere to the wearer independent of the ambient air used when long-term work is expected. The self-contained breathing apparatus can provide only for a limited time of air supply. When you need long-term, you have to go for compressed airlines. The supply of air is maintained from an uncontaminated source through a hose connected to the wearer's face piece or the head enclosure. Factors for selecting RPE. What are the factors to be considered before selecting respiratory protective equipment? Likely oxygen deficiency, the level of protection required, assigned protection factor, work rate, work wear time, temperature or humidity, that is ambient factors, power tool usage in enclosed space or anything, clarity of vision required. Clarity of communication while wearing the RPE is another issue. Sometimes they are fitted with speakers inside, speakers and headsets inside. Congested work areas, quality related factors, face fit testing. As we mentioned earlier, RPEs and masks must be checked for face fitting. Medical fitness of the wearer. How much respiratory stress can the wearer handle? PPE maintenance, ILO code of practice. All protective equipment necessarily provided should be maintained in good condition and replaced at no cost to the worker when no longer suitable for its purpose. This again repeats the rule that PPEs must be supplied, maintained and replaced by the employer at no cost to the worker. The protective equipment should not be used longer than the time indicated by the producer. Workers should make proper use of the equipment provided and maintain it in good condition as far as this is within their control. The responsibility of the workers is also included here in the proper maintenance of the PPE equipment. Respiratory protective equipment other than one-shift disposable respirators should be cleaned, disinfected and thoroughly examined, either depending on which is first, each time it is reissued or after a period specified by national laws or by national or international standards approved or recognized by the competent authority or specified as part of the employer's control measures. So there must be a certain period of inspection which is specified for each kind of RPE. Records should be maintained for the cleaning, disinfection and examination of such respiratory protective equipment and of its condition and any defects in accordance with national law and practice. The record should be authenticated by the person carrying out the test, who should be properly trained for the purpose. Employers should provide for the laundering, cleaning, disinfection and examination of protective clothing or equipment which have been used and may be contaminated by chemicals hazardous to health. It should be prohibited for protective equipment which may be contaminated by chemical hazardous to health to be laundered, cleaned or kept at workers' home. It should be absolutely clear that all means by which hazardous chemicals can be taken home should be prevented. When a contract laundry is employed, care should be taken to ensure that the contractor fully understands the precautions necessary for handling contaminated clothing. Sometimes the contaminated clothing may be given to a contract company for laundry, but they also must be informed of all the hazards of the contamination and the types of chemicals involved. Every employer must ensure that any PPE provided is maintained, cleaned or replaced as appropriate, is in an efficient state, is in efficient working order, and is in good repair. What are the limitations of PPEs? PPE is the last layer of controls. Must not forget this. Some employers encourage employees to use PPE without ever considering the introduction of prevention and control measures that could eliminate the use of PPE. PPE protects only the person wearing it, whereas measures controlling the risk at source can protect everyone at the workplace. Theoretical maximum levels of protection are seldom achieved with PPE in practice, and the actual level of protection is difficult to assess. There are a lot of personal factors which determine the efficacy of the PPE on a person. It depends on how well the person understands and adheres to the proper usage rules of the PPE. If it is used incorrectly, it can cause further hazards. Protection is often ineffective because the PPE is not suitable or is incorrectly fitted, not properly maintained, and may be used improperly. Other limitations: PPE is often designed for men, and for women workers this may introduce serious hazards and discomfort. A famous problem is the news article about NASA's spacesuits have a gender problem. They had designed the spacesuits for men, and when women started going into space, there were serious problems of fitment of the spacesuits to the women astronauts. PPE may fail due to poor or uncomfortable fitting. It is often made to standard sizes that don't take into account the fact that, for example, many workers wear spectacles and many men have beards and stubble. So if it is a mask, it may not fit over goggles or spectacles and beards. Other limitations: PPE may restrict the wearer by limiting mobility or vision, or by requiring additional weight to be carried, causing musculoskeletal problems as well as the health and safety problems that this may cause. It can also lead to PPE not being worn because of the discomfort that it can cause, and workers are then blamed for their own exposures. Sometimes the use of the PPE can cause additional discomfort and the worker may choose not to use it. This might put the worker in danger. PPE itself may also present chemical hazards to the wearer, such as inducing latex or other allergies, or the absorption of harmful substances in plastic and waterproof clothing. We hope you enjoyed this video lesson on personal protective equipment. Your feedback and comments are welcome. Thank you.